3:30. So I will start sharing. And from the beginning. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. The training will be recorded and archived on our website. So if you ever need to reference it, which you will probably have to because today is going to be a great presentation by Erin Nokes, who is here to talk about assistive technology. So before we get to that, the presentation, it will be about 30 minutes long, and then we'll have 15 minutes for questions and discussion at the end. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and then we'll make sure to answer them by the end of the training. And we will do it at the end. So you can put your question in whenever you want. We'll get to it at the end of the presentation. To speak, make sure you unmute yourself. But as we're going, make sure you're muted so we don't get any background sounds. And if there are any resources, we'll put them in the chat at the end. Okay, so today is Assistive Technology with our guest presenter, Erin Nokes, who is an audiologist, or right? You just gave me a question look.
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry.
Okay, I was like, oh gosh, did I get this wrong the whole time? And a child and a parent of a student with a child who has charge syndrome. Getting there. It's Tuesday, and apparently my words have already left me. So here, let me read something and make it easier for everyone. So for people without disabilities, technology makes things easier. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. I went to look up assistive technology memes, and this was the first one I saw, and I just was blown away from the first one because this is something I feel like assistive technology within schools is having a really hard time. You know, some people without disabilities don't realize how important it is for children who really rely on assistive technology. And I think everyone is going to be blown away by Erin's presentation, because even just us talking about assistive technology with her students or with her child, it's just so important. And, you know, there's no prerequisites to, you know, where you're going to be with assistive technology. I'm sure we all have so many stories of what districts have said can and can't go. So I'm really excited for the discussion too at the end of this presentation. Hoping to hear some stories that you guys have gone through at your own schools and success stories with your own students. That would just be so great to hear. So assistive technology, where anything is possible. I tried to get the most simple definition I could get for assistive technology. So this is what I have come up with like all the Google searches and trying to put it all together in a very simple, elegant way. Assistive technology is equipment or a device that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities for people with different abilities. That is the most simple I could come up with, but if anyone has a more simple way to put it, you know, throw it in the chat. Okay, so here we go. Erin, I will give it to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kayla, for the introduction. And yeah, this topic today is obviously a very broad topic. I wanted to share some challenges that I think are in the forefront of most people in these days of COVID and the pandemic. I don't know about the rest of you on this call, but even with typical hearing levels, I struggle when communicating somebody that's wearing a mask. So I definitely notice some of the challenges without having any hearing difference. So I wanted to address first just some of those kind of current issues that we're having, and then we'll move more into some of the other hearing assistive technology. and other assistive tech that some of our students and children that have hearing differences use, either at home or in person. So I wanted to start, my background is Lake Tahoe, one of my favorite places in the world. I grew up there and was just there recently skiing. My oldest child, who has charge, is 16, with hearing loss, vision loss, proprioceptive challenges, no semicircular canals. Alex is their name, learned to ski. So with even all these challenges, they were able to, with the adaptations and with the specialized equipment, was able to learn. So this place is very special to me because of that. It's where they learn to ski, and my dad's wife is an adaptive ski instructor. So if you ever need anybody to help out in Tahoe, Homewood is the name of the resort. They don't have an adaptive program, but they have some amazing instructors that are willing to work with students with learning differences. Anyway, so when we're skiing, we use this technology that we're going to talk a little bit about today, pretty much using a microphone or using something at the speaker or the person's voice. Picking that up at very close proximity is so important today. So that's the input. So when we're talking about input, we're talking about typically a teacher's voice or a parent's voice, maybe an aide or an intervener. How close is their mouth or the sound source to the child's ear? And how is that being picked up by the technology, whether that's the microphone on the computer. So right now I'm in a quiet environment. I'm about 12 inches from the microphone of my computer. And because it's a quiet environment, it's okay at this point. If it was noisy, I would either need to have a microphone attached to the computer so you could hear me better, or some other device, or maybe move it closer so you could hear. So we'll talk a little bit about what is impacting good sound quality today, especially with masking, and what are some things that we can do to improve that. The output is basically what's arriving at the student's ear. And so that looks different today. It can be how the child is hearing at home with distance learning, at home with a teacher that's in a hybrid model. Therefore, the student might be at home, but now the teacher's wearing a mask and there are students in the classroom. So the students in the classroom are having difficulty hearing, and the students at home are having even more difficulty hearing, because now they're not getting the visual cues from the teacher, and the teacher might be moving around. So if a teacher's in a distance learning situation, they're not going to be sitting 12 inches from the microphone on their computer. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, Kayla, can you go to the next? So I wanted to talk about the acoustics of different masks. So I've been asked, I'm now the audiologist with the Santa Clara County Office of Education, the Early Start program. So I'm just working with families and infants and toddlers. Mask wearing hasn't been too much of an issue, although we're starting to see some in-person students. But when I was working as an itinerant audiologist for the 3 to 22 age group. So kids all throughout the county. And so I'm getting calls from families I worked with that are having these challenges with their students, either with just hearing loss or dual sensory. So the mask wearing is obviously a problem. And so when you look at this graph, it shows you, if you see the line, the black line, that's the impact without wearing any mask. So it's at 0 dB. And you'll see that different masks have different amount of attenuation, so how much sound they reduce. So we'll watch the video. Kayla's going to click on the video here, and then we can come back to this slide. It's a 3-minute video, so it gives a lot of information about the impact of mask wearing.
Sorry, let me just go find it. Just take it 1 second. Here we go. Okay, and then I'm going to press play and let me know if you cannot hear it, but that should not be a problem.
Face masks are an important tool for fighting the pandemic, but as you've probably noticed by now, they make it hard to hear people. They're especially frustrating for people with hearing loss. Masks affect speech in two ways. First, they block high-frequency speech sounds, which are already quiet to begin with and are especially difficult for people with hearing loss. Second, masks cover the face, making it impossible to read lips or facial expressions. These visual cues are also especially important for people with hearing loss. To figure out which masks are the best and worst for speech, our team at the University of Illinois tested more than a dozen masks in different shapes and materials. We used a custom-built head-shaped loudspeaker to make precise acoustic measurements, as well as a human talker for more realistic recordings. The best mask overall is this blue surgical mask, which you've probably seen everywhere. It barely changes the sound at all. The KN95 respirator also works well. If you have an N95 respirator, you'll need to speak up because they do muffle high frequencies quite a bit. If you want to use a washable cloth mask, the best choice for sound is pure cotton with a loose weave, like plain or jersey. Adding more layers doesn't seem to hurt sound quality, so consider getting a 3-layer mask for extra protection. Cotton spandex blends like this are soft and comfortable, but they block more sound than pure cotton masks. If you're going to be talking a lot, you should probably stay away from densely woven fabrics like twill, denim, or bedsheets. Even though they're pure cotton, they block a lot of high-frequency sound. Some hearing loss advocates have suggested masks with clear windows, so listeners could read lips and see facial expressions. Unfortunately, the plastic windows degrade sound pretty badly. Face shields are even worse, distorting the sound and directing it behind you. There is some good news, though. Masks only block sound in front of you. Microphones above and below the mask are much less affected. Right now you're hearing me through a microphone 6 feet away, but if I switch to this lapel microphone, it sounds more normal. Lapel microphones work well with medical masks, cloth masks, and window masks. If you have to do a lot of talking with a mask on, consider wearing a lapel microphone connected to an amplification system. Some hearing aids can also work with remote microphones that clip onto a shirt. To summarize, surgical masks and loosely woven cotton masks work best for sound, but they block visual cues. Masks with windows let listeners see your lips, but if you use one, you'll need to speak louder or wear a microphone. I would strongly recommend lapel microphones for teachers and anyone else who needs to talk while wearing a mask. After all, a pandemic is stressful enough without wearing out your voice or constantly repeating yourself. If you'd like to learn more about this project or about our research group, you can visit the Illinois Augmented Listening Laboratory website.
We'll have that link at the end as well, because it has some good information on there. Okay, so I'll wait for Kayla to get back to the slides.
Yeah.
So the takeaway there is really the importance of using a microphone. As he said, the sound is really not impacted if the sound is picked up below the mask. It's more that the sound in front is impacted. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. So we have another great resource in our field. Tina Childress is a deaf audiologist, and she does a lot of advocacy work she's an educational audiologist in Illinois, but she puts out a lot of information about the impact of hearing loss in different situations. So she's a late deaf and adult who is fluent in ASL as well. And so she did a little talk here, or a little research on herself, the impact of different masks. And the takeaway here is without a mask, auditory only, if you look, the performance is really good. As soon as there's any kind of, especially the clear window, the performance, though, the ability to understand words is much less. But then we know that some people really depend on the visual cues with those masks. So the nice part of this study is basically once the visual cues, if you look over to the right-hand side of this graph, it says auditory plus visual cues. As soon as she was given back the visual cues with the clear mask, that she was able to get that better performance. So we'll have this link on there for you too. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so a microphone basically in the case where a student is in distance learning and the teacher is either walking around or has a mask on or a combination, something like this microphone I have here, which is what I use sometimes if I'm not being picked up by my computer microphone, is just, it's an easy lapel mic that teachers can use. They're fairly inexpensive. So any student that's at home, whether or not they're using their technology on the computer side, the teachers should be wearing something like this. So I'd be interested to hear any feedback if teachers are already doing this in classes. It also greatly improves the ability for auto captioning, which is another resource that my child is using. And I'll show you another slide on that. Can you go to the next? Okay. So just to summarize, or just to have an overview of what hearing assistive technology does on the end, on the child, their student using it. So hearing assistive technology is something that is used hopefully by most of the students that have any degree of hearing difference, either in the classroom or at home. And it really, the system mitigates the effects of noise. So if the classroom is noisy, if the teacher's wearing a microphone, it gives the student a positive signal to noise, meaning it brings the teacher's voice or the intervener or aide's voice out of that noise and gives them a chance at understanding. It also helps with reverberation. Reverberation is echo. So if you're in a room like a STEM room where a lot of shiny surfaces, or a lot of preschools are like this, where things are easily cleaned, so you have surfaces that can be wiped down. But those type of rooms acoustically are a nightmare for our students with hearing loss. So having a microphone very close to the teacher's voice really helps mitigate the impact of echo. We see sometimes students in a classroom environment use a sound field system, or also called a classroom audio distribution system, or a CADS. Those systems can actually make it worse if it's in an environment like a STEM room or a multi-purpose room because of that echo. So we want to be careful. If children are using technology, hearing aids or cochlear implants or BAHAs, then using a personal remote microphone system is really the best for those. So another impact is when there's distance from the talker. So whether that's in person, if the teacher is more than 6 feet away from that student, then the need is great for having a remote microphone, either a Rogers system or a traditional FM, something like that. In distance learning, this is where we want to make sure if the teacher is not right in front of the laptop or their computer and moving around, they're going to need a remote microphone. And then again, we talked a little bit about this, the reduced sound quality due to the mask wearing. We noticed, I don't know if you remember in the picture, that the shield was actually the worst. A couple things that happen there. We get a spike of sound, an echo effect in the lower frequencies. And that actually can make it worse for the child because it causes over amplification in those low frequencies, which can further distort or mask out some of those higher frequency sounds that they need. Also, when the person's wearing a face shield, they hear their own voice louder, so they actually decrease the level of their voice. So it really is a big impact. You'll see in the pictures I took, and I'm wearing the same shirt, so I took these pictures earlier today. The top one, I'm wearing the transmitter. And this is a transmitter that's used typically in education because it's easy to use, it's sturdy, and it's an easy one to mute. So a lot of teachers in the classroom, if they're having discussions with other groups that don't involve the student with hearing loss, they can mute it. So you'll see the picture on the bottom there with the button is highlighted in red. That's showing that the transmitter is muted. So hopefully this technology is familiar to most of you. The picture, the hearing aid in the middle is a pink hearing aid. The battery door is actually the receiver. So the microphone that's worn by the teacher or the parent is the transmitter, which has the microphones on it. An advantage to this transmitter that I'm wearing in the picture is that it has 3 microphones. So it further cleans up the signal for the student. You can't really see it on the picture. The microphones are up here. So when the device is worn close to the speaker's voice, it cleans up the signal, meaning it actually suppresses the noise from around the teacher. So if the teacher is in a noisy environment, it gives priority to her voice before even being transmitted to the receiver of the hearing aid. So there are some good technology out there for our students. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to, so the hearing assistive technology looks different for almost every student. It really depends how they're learning, what the environment is like. Is the teacher using multimedia devices? Are they using a screen like a smart board? So there's ways that we can plug into the smart board. So it does take somebody who's very knowledgeable about maximizing the equipment. Unfortunately, in this state, there is a shortage of educational audiologists and audiologists that are familiar on how to meet the needs. The company, especially Phonak, can be really helpful in working with teachers on maximizing the optimal settings and optimal equipment. So we talked a little bit about what in-person looks like. So that's where the teacher is wearing a transmitter and the student is wearing a receiver. In the previous slide, you saw the picture of the receiver that's attached to the hearing aids. Now, the picture below is my child who uses the Baha. So she has bilateral Baha. You can't see them right now. They're hidden, they're black, and so it matches the hair, but they're attached via a magnet, so they're implants. We have a couple things going here. I have the picture on the right is showing her, she has it's called a mini mic. So it's like it's a microphone. It can be used as a remote microphone, but it can also be plugged in directly to the computer. So whatever the teacher's saying, this device on the right, the mini mic, picks it up and sends it right to her devices. So instead of having the sound travel from the speaker on the computer to her Baha microphones, it's sent directly there. So that's a huge advantage. Even though Alex is in a quiet room, it's still an acoustic advantage to have the input sent directly to the devices. A couple other things going on here. We have multiple screens set up. I was hoping to see, this is a picture taken earlier today. I was hoping to see, now that just starting yesterday, her high school went into a hybrid model. So the teacher that's teaching this class, and this is her world history class, I think they're on a lecture on Japan, now has students in the classroom. I couldn't see a picture of her because the teacher had just their slide presentation up. But what I did see, and you can't see it in this picture, if you look at well, you might be able to see it, the laptop on the left, there's a black box on the upper right portion of the screen. These are auto captions. And when I was listening to the teacher, her voice, the sound quality was good. So I'm actually assuming that she is wearing a microphone. There is a large population of deaf and hard of hearing students on this campus. So I'm hoping that she was wearing the microphone, because the sound quality was good and the captions, the auto captioning, even though auto captioning is not great, or speech to text, but it was very accurate. So I was watching over Alex's shoulder for about 5 minutes, and I saw that the captions were very accurate. So I'm assuming that the teacher is wearing a microphone here. The other thing, in terms of assistive tech we have going on here is the multiple screens. So right now, she is recording. So my child is recording. If you see a pink tape dispenser, she has her iPhone there recording the session so she can review it after. Also, she has multiple screens. So sometimes she'll pin the interpreter. For this teacher, she prefers not to, and likes to follow along with the PowerPoint, because I believe the PowerPoints are so helpful that she doesn't want to have the interpreter kind of blocking the screen there. Let's see, anything I else want to talk on this? Yeah, so some students, they aren't using a device attached to their computer, and other students are. It really depends on the quality of the speakers on the either laptop or computer, and the room noise. So if you're in a room where you can close the door, you have a good quality speaker, the student might not need to have equipment attached. But my child has a quiet room and still prefers to have the device hooked in because she appreciates the better sound quality. And it really eases her listening, the energy. And I think when she has to listen that harder, it does contribute to her fatigue at the end of the day. Okay, can you switch to the next slide? All right. So students who use equipment, this top right picture is a picture of another transmitter. If a student is using that equipment at home, most of the districts that I work with allowed the students to take it home during distance learning, with the exception of one very large school district here in Santa Clara County, basically denied the use of equipment at home. This was in the beginning of, excuse me, the beginning of last school year. So I don't know if enough parents complained that their child did need this equipment at home. But most districts allowed this to happen. Most of the time it's plug and play. Most of the time we plug it, if the equipment's already been calibrated and tuned to the child's personal equipment, it's a matter of taking the transmitter home, getting the aux cord that comes with the equipment. And basically, it's a standard headphone jack. So one attaches to the transmitter and the other attaches to the laptop, right where the headphones go in. And so once this happens, well, the computer's not on. If it was on, the transmitter, actually, the microphone on the transmitter mutes. So it's not picking up noise around. So if a child was in a room that wasn't very quiet, it would not be picking up the environmental noises. It would only be transmitting the input from the laptop. Sometimes the volume has to be adjusted. And so what that entails is going to, you can see, I don't know, it's not a great picture here, but you can go to the settings or find that speaker icon and select the headphones, because that's what you're plugging the transmitter into the headphone jack. So you have to go to that section where you can increase the volume and usually slide it, excuse me, about 3/4 to full, depending on the needs of this child. And then for our youngest listeners, we have a splitter where we can plug in the transmitter to one side. So this bottom picture where you see the transmitter with 2 cables coming out of the computer, you can have the input going to the transmitter, which will then transmit to the child's devices. And then you can attach either headphones for the intervener, for the aide, or for the parent to wear. You can also attach it to what I've done is I've attached it sometimes to a small speaker, very inexpensive speakers. So if you're in the room monitoring your student, you can still hear what the teacher is saying, but the student is getting that optimal input. Okay, sorry about that. I need to Another drink. Can you go to the next slide? That's all I had. It was a lot of information on equipment, and I'm really looking forward to answering any questions. I saw a couple questions pop up in the chat. We might not be able to fully answer the questions on what the best hearing assistive technology is for your student or for your child, but hopefully we can get some information to you.
Hi, Erin, this is Julie. And actually, the only two comments in the chat both came from me, just assuring Kayla that the sound was working, and then reminding people if they had questions or comments, they could use the chat. So, so let's wait and see if anybody has questions about the devices you showed, or if anyone is using any of these things and has questions or has had success or challenges.
I'd be really interested to know what people are experiencing at home and what they're using and what's working and what's not working.
And Erin, this is Maurice. I just want to say, wow, this is such great information. I'm going to have to watch it at least 1 or 2 times now and take notes and really get it all down. But just to know the current terminology and to see equipment that I had no idea even exists and to hear that it's being used regularly, it's just really great to hear. So this is wonderful information.
Yeah, I believe in